Welcome to the KEF Bytes YouTube channel. I'm going to start a new series on Intro to Swift. This is for the absolute beginner. Today is going to be episode 1. We're going to talk about lets and vars. So if you have any familiarity with Swift at all, skip right over this episode. But if you're just getting started, want a quick intro, here we go. Programming. We have something called mutability. What you see there is liable or tendency to change. Well, we have two versions of that. Mutable, something can change. Immutable, meaning it's not going to change over time. In Swift, this is represented by var for mutable and let for immutable. Vars are variables, lets are constants, meaning you can set a var, change its value as many times as you want, but you set the value for a let, and it is written in stone. It's done. You're not going to change it anymore. So with that said, let's go ahead and look at a couple examples here. We're going to start, we're going to be talking about representing a person with a name, an age, and a gender. 3 basic things for every person. The first thing I'm going to do is going to create a var for the person's name. We'll use their full name. And the way we create a var, or variable, we use the var keyword, and then the name of the variable is full name, and then we have the assignment operator, which is the equal sign, and we set it to some value. In this case, we'll set it to Steve Jobs. Using a string there, don't worry about the type. We'll talk about object types later on, but for now, just go along with me. So we use the keyword var to create a variable. The name of the variable is full name. We have the assignment operator, and we are assigning Steve Jobs, which is on the right side of the assignment operator, to whatever's on the left side. Okay, we're also going to put an age here. We'll say age, and we're going to use an int here for this. Don't worry about that for now, just go along with it. And then finally, our last thing is we're going to use a let for gender. And I know in today's age that you can never be sure, but we'll go in the Wayback Machine and say that gender never changes. So, I've set gender to a string also. Later on, we'd probably use an enum, but for now, we'll just go along with the easy version and make it a string. So what do we have here? We've created 2 variables and a constant. The variable is created with the var keyword, followed by the name, the assignment operator, and then the value that we're going to assign to that variable. The constant is created with the let keyword, followed by the name of that constant, again, the assignment operator, and then whatever value will be assigned to that constant. Now, one thing to know about Swift is you'll see here that it's very simple. Swift is smart. Swift can infer the type of variable or the type of constant you're creating here. In this case, for full name, the type is string. For age, it is going to be int, and for gender, it is also string. Now, if we wanted to explicitly set these, we could, and to do that, after the name of the variable, we would put a colon, and then the type, which in this case would be a string, and then for age, it would be int, gender, it'd be string. Now, this is not necessary. Sometimes it helps with readability. There's other times it might help. We're not going to get into that now. That's a little more deeper. But just know that you can either explicitly set the type, or you can leave it out and let Swift infer the type. So moving on. Now let's look at the actual mutability of these variables in this constant. Let's say we have full name and we want to change the value assigned to it. We could either do that, we could easily do that, just like this. We can run our playground and see it changed, no problem, no one complained. We could do the same with age. Let's say another year has gone by, so we'll assign the age 65 to it. Again, no problem. Swift is perfectly happy. Now, what happens when we get to our constant, though? We say gender, try and assign female to it, and you are going to see that we get an error. The error says cannot assign to value. Gender is a let constant, meaning we create a gender as a let. Once we set the value, cannot be changed. If you click this little icon here, it'll give you an idea. Hey, here's how we fix it. Well, to fix it, you change it to a var. We don't really want to do that. For our purposes, we're going to leave it as a let and just get rid of this line because we've demonstrated that we cannot change the constant once we've created it. We can also not change its type. So let's say we had age, and we're going to now say it's another year, and we do this. We sign 66, but this time 66 is a string. Again, we get an error because once we declare the variable, instantiate it with a type, meaning it inferred it. Well, in this case it didn't infer it. We explicitly said it, but it could be inferred. But either way, when we set it with a value and a type, we cannot change that type. Same thing with the gender. Should be obvious, but we'll just demonstrate. Let's try and set it to a bool. Say yes, they have a gender, but it's going to complain because that bool is not a string, and we cannot assign it there. Also because it's a let, so we couldn't assign it either. So the double whammy there. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. Another thing to see is that we cannot redeclare the variable like this. Say we wanted to do this. A little trouble typing here. We cannot redeclare it because we already have a variable with that name. So we cannot use the same name and declare another variable with it. Even if we tried to make it a let, to make it a constant, we still could not do that. As you see there, invalid redeclaration of full name. Same thing, we could not, let's make it a bool here. We cannot, redeclare a new one with a different type. Bang. Invalid redeclaration of full name. So no matter what we try and change, we cannot redeclare a variable or a constant with the same name. Should be pretty self-explanatory there, pretty clear. While we're talking about naming, let's talk about how we want to name our variables and our properties. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this for now. When we name, we want to use camel case. Well, in case you don't know what camel case is, camel case starts with a lowercase, and then every word after that is capitalized. Camel case, let's say we added another word, we would capitalize that. That is camel case. Starting with a capital letter would not be camel case. So this is not camel case. Well, with our variables and our constants, we want to use camel case. Really, we're going to use that for just about anything other than object types. So, with that in mind, we have full name. We see it's camel case. Age, single word, doesn't matter. Again, let's just do a couple examples here. We could say first name equals Peter, var last name equals Parker. And we're just seeing a couple examples of using camel case here when naming things. Same thing for a constant. Now we'll do I'm just coming up with a name here on the fly. Our full name equals Peter Parker. So again, even with our constants, just an example, we want to use our camel case. Some other things to keep in mind when we're naming our variables and our constants is we don't want to put any sort of mathematical symbol in there. So we wouldn't want to do this. That wouldn't work. Swift isn't going to like that. Swift actually sees that as consecutive statements because it knows that this plus is an operator. So it's not going to allow you to do that. At the same time, you could not put a space. There we go. We see a second identifier. It's not going to allow that. If we thought we wanted a space, could probably just represent that as an underscore. Like so. Easy enough. We don't want to do an arrow because, again, that has a special meaning in Swift. So it's not going to let you do that. Again, thinks it's consecutive statements. And finally, the last kind of fun thing you could do is you can always use emojis in your name. So Swift has no problem with that. I'll be honest with you. I never use that, but it's kind of fun. Something to know. The last thing I want to show you here about declaring variables and constants is we could create them on the same line. So we could say, actually, let's just use what we have here. Gonna get rid of that. If we wanted to separate them by comma, we could do this. And what we're saying is, here's a list of variables separated by commas, and then declare them like this. So in the second one, we leave out the keyword because it's on the same line, and the comma lets us know that it's also going to be a variable. So we can do that. Again, not something I use very often, but it's possible. Just a couple of last things I want to point out here before we finish this first episode of Intro to Swift is comments. You can see my definitions up here in green. They're commented out. This is how you do a block comment with the slash and then the asterisk. To comment a single line, you would do 2 slashes like that. If I wanted to do a whole block, again, do the slash, asterisk, and then close it with the slash, asterisk, and then I could, after that, go on with my coding and do so. That looks good. One final thing I want to point out is if you are coming from another language, other languages often make you put some sort of character to finish a line, like that. In Swift, it's not necessary. It's not going to hurt it at all, but it's unnecessary, and once you get used to Swift, you won't want it in there. Just trust me on that. So we'll get rid of that, and really, that does it for today's lesson. Again, this was a very quick intro to variables and constants in Swift and the idea of them being mutable or immutable. Next time, we'll move on from here and start talking about the next topic. Until then, thanks a lot, and see you soon.